Hi, this is Miss Cat, and today's maths lesson is about mental strategies using halving and multiplication. This is something that will really give you maths superpowers. So let's start with halving. And then keeping in mind that halving is when we divide something into two or split something into two parts. It's the opposite of doubling. There are some halves really that you need to know by heart, and they are the ones listed over here. If you're not confident with these yet, this is really the place that you need to start. And until you really know these, any other kind of halving that you do is going to be quite tricky. And that's for a very good reason. These are the base for basically any other halves that you might need to know. Let's have a look at some examples. So if I find a question like find half of 900, I can make a very quick connection in my mind to this fact here, which is showing me what is half of 90. And half of 90 is 45, which we know. Let's keep in mind some other things that we were learning about partitioning and powers of 10 that we were talking about the other day. So 900 is 10 times bigger than 90. So if I know that 90 divided by 2, or not half of 90 is 45, I need to multiply 45 by 10 to find the half of 900. Because 900 is 10 times bigger than 90. And that will give me the answer, which is half of 900 is 450. And you can see here the very clear connection where we know that half of 90 is 45 and half of 900 is 450, a number that is 10 times bigger. Okay, so these basic facts related to halving are really your starting point. Let's have a look at some other examples now. So what if someone asks me to find half of 460? Well, we can partition 460 into two parts. This is something that we've been practicing as well. Partitioning is a great strategy to making numbers easy to work with. So in this case, 460 becomes 460. I know straight away that, well, half of 400 is 200, that's very obvious, and half of 60 is 30. So if I know these two facts, then I can easily do in my head, well, 200 plus 30 is 230, and that gives me my answer. Half of 460 is 230. Let's have a look at another example. Find half of 5,700. In this case, I can partition this number again. 5,700 becomes 5,700. Half of 5,000 is 2,500, and half of 700 is 350. And again, if I add these two numbers back together, 2,500 plus 350, I get 2,850. So half of 5,700 is 2,850, and these are things that I can do in my head, keeping these numbers here in my head as I go along. The reason I've written these down for you is so that you can see the thinking, the process of thinking very clearly. So how can halving help with multiplication? So let's have a look at some relationships that happen that maybe we don't always think about. When I've got 4 times 10, that's a very easy sum to do, and I know that the answer to that is 40. I should also really know that 4 times 5 is 20 as just a quick number fact that I have in my head. But what's the relationship between these two numbers here and these two numbers here? Well, if we look closely, we can see that 5 is half of 10, and we can also see that 40 is half of 20. This is a very clear relationship. And another example, 9 times 10 is 90 and 9 times 5 is 45. So we can see that half of 90 is in fact 45. It's a relationship that's carried over on both sides of this sum. So we can say as a general rule then, when I want to find any number multiplied by 5, I can use the rule multiplied by 10 divided by 2. If we think about this example here, we do 4 times 10 is 40, divided by 2 is 20. And the same one here, 9 times 10 is 90, divided by 2 is 45. So using this rule here, we can see that 4 times 5 is 20, using 4 times 10 is 40 divided by 2, and 9 times 5 is 45, using 9 times 10 is 90, divided by 2 is 45. This is quite clear in these cases that when it's useful is when we're working with bigger numbers, as we'll see in a moment. Another useful relationship to think about is this one. What happens when I've got 3 times 100? Well, that's 350. It's an easy sum to do. What about if it was 3 times 50? A little bit more tricky. Again, we can apply the same rule. Looking at the idea that 50 is half of 100, logically then, the answer here to 3 times 50 should be half of 3 times 100. So half of 300 is 150. 3 times 50, 150. 3 times 100, 300. 3 times 50 is half of 3 times 100. And another example. 7 times 100 is 700. 7 times 50, 350. Again, the relationship you can see clearly. 350 is half of 700. 50 is half of 100. So we can follow with this rule then. When I want to find any number multiplied by 50, I can use the rule multiplied by 100 divided by 2. Let's have a look again. 7 times 100. Say I want to find what is the answer to 7 times 50. I do 7 times 100 is 700, and then divide by 2, which brings me to 350. And in this case also, if I want to find 3 times 50, I could do 3 times 100 is 300, divided by 2 is 150. Let's have a look at some specific examples. So, examples when multiplying by 5. So, what is 44 times 5? This might be the type of typical question that we'd get. So, let's use our rule, multiply by 10 and divide by 2. 44 times 10 is easy to do. We know how to do that multiplied by powers of 10. So, 44 times 10 is 450. Remember though that we want to multiply by 5. So this result here, our next step is divide it by 2. So 440 divided by 2 is 220. Again, an easy multiplication, an easy division to do in my head mentally. So 44 times 5 follows then is 220. A half of what is 44 times 10. Another example, slightly more difficult this time. What is 95 times 5? Let's follow this again through. So, first step, following our rule, times 10 divided by 2. 97 times 10 is 970. We know that. Next step, remember we want to multiply by 5, not multiply by 10 that we've done here. So that means we need to find the half of this number. But maybe I don't know what 970 divided by 2 is. So let's go back to what we were doing before with halving using partitioning again. So partitioning, let's partition 970 into 2 parts, 970. Half of 900 is 450 and half of 70 is 35. So if I add these two numbers back together again, 450 plus 35, we have our answer 485. So my answer follows then that 97 times 5 is 485. Again, I'm showing you the process of working here and here so you can become familiar with the process that you should be doing in your heads. Let's have a look at examples when multiplying by 50. So remember our rule here is multiply by 100 and divide by 2. So what is 63 times 50? Now this starts to look a bit more complicated, right? But really it's not. is just following the rules that we've learnt already and understanding that halving and multiplying by powers of 10 can help us to find solutions quickly. So let's start with a rule. Multiply by 100 first. 63 times 100 is 6,300. What's my next step? Divide by 2. Because we want to find multiplied by 50 and not multiplied by 100. 50, remember, is half of 100. So 6,300 divided by 2 is 3,150. 3,000 is half of 6,000 and 150 is half of 300. That's a simple example. So we can say finally that 63 multiplied by 50 is 3,150. And a more difficult question again. What is 75 times 50? Well, let's start with the first step. Multiply by 100. 75 times 100 is 7,500. Remember, we want to multiply by 50, no, not 100. So we need to divide our answer here by 2 because 50 is half of 100. So 7,500 divided by 2. Again, maybe it's a tricky number, so let's use partitioning. Break 7,500 into 7,500. Half of 7,000 we know now is 3,500 and half of 500 is 250. So now that's all that's left to do is add these two numbers back together. 3,500 plus 250 is 3,750. And there's our answer to our original problem, which was 75 multiplied by 50, which is 3,750. So this really helps you to think about doing these multiplications that you might normally do in the long multiplication way in your head. Let's have a look at one more step, which is the most difficult and the furthest that we're going to go today. So there's one more way that halving can help us with multiplication. So we already established that if I've got 4 times 100, it equals 400. And 4 times 50 is 200. And we established that these are halves, right? What about 4 times 25 then? So 25 is half of 50 again. And the answer here, well, 4 times 25 is 100, is half of 200. So I could start with 4 times 100 is 400, divide by 2 is 200, and divide by 2 again is 100, and that will give me the answer to what is 4 times 25, right? Let's have another look at one example. So in this case, we're looking at the 7 times 100, which is 700, 7 times 50, which is 350. Again, this is the half here, right? So 350 is half of 700, 50 is half of 100. But here again, we've got 25. 25 is half of 50. So I could use once more what is 7 times 100 to figure out what is 7 times 25 by using the process of multiplying by 100 and then dividing by 2 and dividing by 2 again. So 7 times 100 is 700, divided by 2 is 350, and divided by 2 again is 175. So I could figure out my answer to 7 times 25 by this rule here. When I want to find any number multiplied by 25, I can use the rule multiplied by 100, divided by 2, and then divided by 2 again. So finding the half and finding the half once more. So let's have a look at some examples. What is 68 times 25? Now, you might look at that and think, whoa, that's so scary. But let's go back to the things that we know. Let's use our rule, multiplied by 100, divided by 2, and divided by 2 again. So 68 times 100 is easy to do. We get the result 6,800 when we used our powers of 10. Remember, we want to find what is 68 times 25 though, so we now need to divide our answer here by 2 and then by 2 again, finding the half and then finding the half again. So 6,800 divided by 2 would be 3,400, and then 3,400 divided by 2 will be 1,700. So my answer logically follows that 68 multiplied by 25 is 1,700. Another example, what is 85 multiplied by 25? This one's slightly more difficult. We know 85 times 100 is 8,500. But we want to find what is 85 times 25, right? So 100 divided by 2 would be 50, divided by 2 again would be 25. So we need to take our answer here and divide by 2 and divide by 2 again. So let's do it. 8,500 divided by 2 is 4,250. Now, maybe 4,250 is a tricky number to find the half of, but again, let's partition it. So we've got 4,250. Half of 4,000 is 2,000, half of 200 is 100, and half of 50 is 25. So let's add those numbers back up together. 2,000 plus 100 plus 25 is 2,125. So our answer here to 85 times 25 is 2,125. So that's a really, really quick overview of some of the strategies that we've been using this week. Remember, practice makes perfect. Begin with this by writing it down and going through the process. Gradually you can shorten it and you can start doing it all mentally in your head. If your mental maths is really good already, you already have superpowers and you already can work with some of these slightly more complicated mental multiplications that we've been doing. Good luck!